Who is Steve Dotto? For over 2 decades, he hosted and produced a nationally syndicated TV show in Canada called Dotto Tech. It was a how-to show that taught millions of Canadians about technology. Around 2012, he shifted his focus to the online world, and since then, he's created hundreds of webinars, courses, podcasts, videos, and more that he shares with the world. Join me today as we have a casual conversation about what he's up to today, his plans for the future, and as we announce how we met and how that meeting has turned into a project the two of us are creating together. Hi, this is Bob Poole. Welcome to the Water Cooler Hangout. For over 40 years, I've been helping people like you grow and prosper. Please join me and guests like Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki, Lauren Cordain, Beverly and Tim Walden, Phil Elmore, and more as we share real-life stories about sales, marketing, leadership, creativity, and current events. Need help in moving to the next level? Find out how others have done it by listening to the Water Cooler Hangout. Hi everyone, Bob Poole here. I'm here today with Steve Dotto of Dotto Tech. He's also known as Canada's favorite geek. How you doing, Steve?
I'm feeling pretty good, Bob. How about you?
I'm good today. I'm good. Favorite geek in Canada. That's a nice title. How'd you get that?
Well, I kind of gave it to myself, I think. Well, for about 20 years, we had a television show and a radio program here in Canada, which was syndicated. Both were syndicated, and I taught Canadians how to use technology. It was a show called Dotto Tech, and it was just, there wasn't very much competition. There was a few other shows, but I decided that since I was the longest running show, the technology show in Canada, I must be Canada's favorite geek.
I agree with you. It sounds actually perfect. You and I have known each other, I guess. I met Steve back when I just was trying to find some technology information, and I found that you had a webinar. You call it Webinar Wednesday?
Yes.
And I was impressed. So I signed up for that. Then I signed up for your Patreon account because I wanted to get some free courses that you had out there on Evernote. Mm-hmm. And one thing led to another. But before we get into that, I want to talk about Macs. Mm-hmm. Because when I go online and I look you up and it says, about Steve, your about page, mm-hmm. It says it's a story about a guy named Max. So who's Max?
I have no idea.
It said Max had a good job. He worked for the king. He cured disease.
Are you talking Miracle Max?
Yeah, that's actually on your about page.
Where's that?
Yeah, it is on your about page on, let's see.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
You've caught me off guard.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked it up. It says he had a good job. He worked for the king. He'd cure diseases and make them all sorts of miracles happen.
Yeah, well, The Princess Bride is my favorite movie. But so I wonder if when we were writing the so you're saying it's a boat. I don't even know where's the boat me. Oh, there's a boat. About us. I'm just taking a look. Oh, I see what I did.
So there you are. So I'm like, what does Max and the Princess Bride have to do with you?
Oh, good heavens, you're right. Oh, I must have. I'm pretty sure that I don't take any mind-altering substances anymore, but I might have when I wrote this particular bit of copy. The Princess Bride is my favorite all-time movie, and I sign off all of my videos and podcasts and live streams with "Have fun storming the castle," which is Miracle Max's, his tagline as our heroes are headed off. Anybody who has watched The Princess Bride knows that. But I guess what I was moved to write this was if you stop and think about it, Miracle Max is just like you and me. We're in a second phase of our career, third phase of our career. We're in whatever the third age as the people call it. Right. We've done our main career. We've built our business. Many of us are still actively engaged, but we've had a good career. We've made a difference. But we increasingly, our age group, our demographic, you and I are very close in age, we're finding ourselves being marginalized, irrelevant. The world doesn't really want to hire us anymore. And consequently, we have to find a side hustle. We have to find our own thing because the world isn't going to provide us with a job. That was Miracle Max in The Princess Bride. He sadly had to hang a shingle with miracles provided, no guarantees. And he had to take work, whereas he used to be on retainer to the king. And so I guess it's not a lot different than you and I. We used to have jobs with companies or contracts, and then sometimes now we have to kind of do it ourselves.
Yeah. How about, did you ever have a job, a real job?
Yeah, I did. Well, when I came out of high school in my formative years, I worked in everything from repairing printing presses to running display systems for the scoreboard systems. I live in Vancouver for the Pacific Coliseum back in the day, where the Vancouver Canucks used to play, in BC Place, where we had football and soccer and baseball and stuff like that. I used to do the computer programming on those systems. As I say, I repaired printing presses for a long time, and I've done a variety of different jobs. And then I worked as a sales guy. I started out in business as a desktop publishing sales guy. I sold Quark Express and Adobe Illustrator and Macintosh Pluses and 512K Macs to publishing houses, and that's really how I started my career. But I was like, it's amazing I never worked in restaurants, because I used to be an actor. I used to want to be an actor. Mm-hmm. And I actually was cast in a variety of different things back in the day. And that combination of understanding printing and performing is what led me to the career that I've ultimately had on television, because Apple used to use me for seminars all the time to teach people about desktop publishing, because I was entertaining and knowledgeable. And that's how I was first discovered by a TV producer who was looking to do a small little TV series on technology. They hired me. I liked it. And then I started to do it myself.
So that was the genesis.
That was it. A woman named Betty Mitchell. She hired me to do a show that they called Dotto on Data, which was to teach teachers how to use computers. And this was before, in the classroom. And this was before the internet. Well, the internet was there, but it was before the web.
Right.
So we were teaching tools like Eudora and Fetch and Archie, these kind of tools. And we were talking about using computers in the classroom.
So when did you make the transition from the TV to the online world, the internet? When did the internet get to be, deep enough and wide enough for you to do that?
2010. And it was a combination of things. So I'd been doing television for the better part of 16, 17 years at that point there. 1992 was the first TV series I think we did. And the writing was kind of on the wall if we paid attention. YouTube was just kind of starting to make a real difference, but people were starting to do on demand for finding out how to use their computers, how to use technology, as opposed to, destination television. And so I knew that there was a shift on the horizon. But what really pushed us was here in Canada, there was a consolidation happening where all the broadcasters we boiled down to just a few broadcasters. And I worked for a smaller national network, which got acquired by a bigger national network. And so all of my top end protection, I had angels in the C-suite previously who were big fans of me and that would kind of do sweetheart deals and help me along. They were replaced, and so suddenly in the senior management at the network, I had no cachet anymore. I had a TV series that they liked, that they knew was good, but they only saw it as a way to make money. And so they shifted. They came to me and said, "We're going to shift you to the model that everybody's doing, which is you pay to be on the air." And whereas previously I had a barter deal where we shared revenue, and I paid for production costs, they paid for, they gave, that sort of stuff. And so it was a partnership, and it was going to become you pay to be on the air. And that broke me in a lot of ways. One of which was it affected something in Canada called the C number, which meant I couldn't be classified as Canadian content. You get tax credits if you're classified as Canadian content, but if you pay to be on the air, you're not classified as Canadian content anymore. So they broke my business model.
Wow.
But they also broke my heart. Like after 20 years on the air as your partner, you want me to pay to be here, so you just see me now as a revenue source. And now I understand that I've always been that. I mean, I'm pragmatic from that perspective, but there's a different feeling when you're a valued partner as opposed to when, you can be replaced by, any show, the home improvement guy, that's sponsored by the local hardware store. We'll just slide that into the time slot. And it meant that I could be disenfranchised from my audience instantly. With the stroke of a pen, a scheduler could move me from Saturday to Sunday or from Monday to Friday and change my time slot. And my audience has to find me again. And so I realized that I really only worked for them. My customers were, I guess I always knew this, my customers were the networks, my sponsors. Right. It was anybody but who watched the show. And so in 2010, when I shifted over, and when I said, that's it, I've had enough, we've had a good long run, and I could see the writing on the wall, and I was not prepared. My pride got in the way. I said, I will never, ever, ever pay a nickel to be on the air. I can still remember the meeting, and they looked at me and said, well, then we'll give you a good deal. I said, no, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to pay a nickel. One nickel is too much. They said, okay. And then we had some disagreement on some of that stuff. And I agreed to do one more season for them, and they agreed to do it as a barter deal. But that whole season, which I never did pay for, which wasn't paid for, but was, kind of the last one under the old model. They wanted me to kind of prepare for the new economic model. And I told them up front, I'm not going to. And we reached the end of that deal. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. And I cleaned up my office. My staff was let go. Everybody was gone. And then come August, I'm getting emails from the network, because the programming department said, when can we expect delivery of first episode in September?
Really?
And no word of a lie. No word of a lie. I didn't you hear what I said? Oh, we thought you were it was a negotiating position.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Great story. So did you spend that last year getting ready, though, to make a transition?
Poorly. Yeah. Poorly. I think I was getting ready emotionally to, kind of to let the team go and the thing that I loved about doing television was not being on TV. It was being part of a team. And so I was getting ready for that. And I thought what I would do is I would just start some sort of a business where I, went into companies and helped them with their productivity and coached them. And I didn't really have a great plan. I still didn't respect YouTube at that point there, to the point of thinking that I could build a career on YouTube, to be honest. 2010, I still saw YouTube as a curiosity. My ego probably got in the way. I'm not for the YouTube. It's a small screen. I'm on the medium screen. I'm on television. So there was a little bit of that probably was there. So I theoretically prepared, but as I look in retrospect, I did not plan. I did not have any idea what the world was going to. I was also very, I don't know, I had those tremendous arrogance on my part, I believe. I've been competitive for 20 years in one of the toughest industries to be competitive in, and I'd made money every year through all the ups and downs in television. So I had a pretty big ego saying, I can figure out how to do it in business. Now, just from a perspective of that, I always had the attitude of, if you set a goal, you find a common value, and then you work towards that goal, and you can do it with your partners, and you can make it happen. Of course, that was fractured finally by what happened in television, but I just thought that would happen. And so I thought, whatever's going to happen, whatever's going to come over the next few years, I will figure it out, and we will figure out how to be successful. Well, world said, hold my beer.
Yeah. So what happened first? I can't even imagine. At least, I've been through some of that too, but I kind of didn't hit a dead stop where I had to switch gears totally how I put my product out there. Well, maybe this year I did, Yeah. COVID kind of did that to me. But but how did you make it that first year? How did you?
Well, the first year was easy. It was 4 years before I really realized that what kind of trouble I was in, because there was, I didn't, business didn't dry up. I was still a nationally known figure. I still had a lot of speaking engagements that paid exorbitantly well. And so and the shows were still on the air. They played me in replay. We were stripped. I was still on the air every day for 3 years, two or 3 years. You'd flip on the television, there'd be Steve yammering away about something, because they didn't care if the content was relevant. They just cared that it filled the airspace and it was Canadian content. Mm-hmm. So they played my shows until the very end of their rights period, which is kind of ironic, isn't it? Yeah. So I wasn't, even though I'd stopped, I wasn't completely off the air, but I wasn't doing any of those deals anymore. I wasn't, I wasn't generating the revenue for the show itself. So it was all of the additional things, speaking engagements, those sorts of opportunities. And then, I just wasn't, I didn't really know how to. I probably could have built a pretty good business career as a keynote speaker, but I didn't know how to, or I didn't dive into creating the supporting content. Once the TV show was gone, where was my bona fides? Where was my promotional thing? So I hadn't figured out blogging, or I hadn't figured out writing a book. I hadn't figured out any of those sorts of things. So the speaking business continued, mainly by referral because I was popular, but I didn't have that big advertising platform of, being on television that made people, when they're, flipping through the roster of speakers they can hire for their event, that made them go, oh, I see him, on TV. Let's do it. I like him. He's funny. He's good. He's helped me. So once that kind of dried up, things started to just kind of slow down, and it was death by 1,000 cuts until, by the time 4 or 5 years went by 2014, I was in trouble. I had basically spent through my nest egg, and I hadn't figured out really what to do yet. And that's when I kind of turned to YouTube and started to build my own thing online.
Now, I found you early then. I discovered you through, as I recall, through just a Google search of some kind. It may have been Evernote. Although, I remember Evernote being big in the beginning with you and me. We didn't know each other then, but I was like, okay, this guy's really good on this Evernote thing. And I used Evernote, and I hadn't had any training with it. And what they did have, didn't help me a lot. I was only using maybe 10% of the power of Evernote at that point. I think you were giving away a free Evernote course. And then if you joined your Patreon group, you ended up getting a full-blown Evernote course. Yeah. And what I liked about it, too, was you said, listen, if you sign up for this, you'll get it, and you'll get it forever. If we make some changes, you'll get the next version, too. And I'm like, how can I lose on this? So, yeah, that's how I met you. So that was pretty early, though, right?
Yeah, that was it, probably 2015 or so. What happened was, as I was kind of spiraling, my old business partner used to say circling the bowl, talking about being flushed down the toilet. As I was still circling the bowl, still doing the speaking gigs, I happened to be hired to be the MC for an award ceremony, a big internet award ceremony where they were celebrating all of the people online who were being successful. And the keynote speaker at that was Mari Smith. And Mari met me at the conference, and Mari is based in the States, but she's Scottish by birth, but her family lives in Canada. So she knew who I was. She had seen me on television. And she's about 17 foot tall. Yeah. I can still remember her talking to me about kind of what I was doing in business. And she just looked down at me and she said, "You're doing it all wrong." And I said, "Well, I don't know what I'm doing, to be honest with you." She says, "Come." And she took me under her wing for 6 months, and she showed me her business. She showed me what an influencer does online and how you find a platform. And in that point, her platform was Facebook, and how you build information products and support them through, you use your platform to find an audience, and then you build information products to sell to them, and basically becoming a content marketer. And I knew none of this. When Mari started to talk to me, I didn't know what a landing page was. I didn't know what a lead magnet was. I didn't know the importance of a mail list. I knew none of that. I knew how to negotiate television deals. I knew how to negotiate with sponsors. I knew how to talk about, the things that marketing companies were interested in doing for spending their marketing budgets. So it was exciting, but it was terrifying because when you discover what you don't know, right, and you think you know a lot, and then you discover that you're a charlatan, it's a little bit of a comeuppance. Thank God. I don't know why Mari was moved to help me, because what she gave me was a gift. But that got me started, it got me started to the point that my hubris took over, and I just made more mistakes. So I said, okay, I'm going to build a course that everybody's going to want. I'm going to build the best course ever. I'm going to call it what did I call it? something about productivity. Discover awesome productivity. I think it was DAP. Discover awesome productivity, something like along that line.
Yeah.
And I built this course teaching people how to, because I knew all the productivity tools. On television we'd covered things like Evernote and that stuff in the past, and I was starting to dabble with showing that sort of stuff on YouTube. But it was, how to use your email system, these sorts of things, and just how to be more productive, how to use calendar systems and integrate them to your businesses. Not just from a personal perspective, but from a small business to large business perspective. And so I released this course following the model that Mari had taught me, which is sharing to your email list, which I hadn't nurtured, and then doing a webinar and selling. And I think I sold like 18 copies or something like that. And I used a webinar to sell them. Now, I was enamored by the entire webinar world. I thought webinars were the most amazing thing because having done live television and radio, all of a sudden now just sitting in your desk without any government interference, you can broadcast to as many people as want to listen to you at a time, and they're not telling me what I can say and what I can't say. It was just like, holy cow, this is just the best thing on the planet. It's still a freaking miracle. What we're doing right now. I mean, with the effort that I used to have to go through to put on a radio show every week, and the license, staying under the CRTC regulations of what you can say and what you can't say, and how much advertising had to be in, and just the infrastructure for the license, and and it's fighting for a time slot. God, if we're not in drive time, we're not getting any earballs on our show. Just the access to market that we had with all of this technology was just miraculous. But I'm meandering because the bottom line was I created this course that nobody was interested in. And I basically run through my nest egg. I had done everything that I thought, and I was pretty depressed. I actually reached a point where I didn't have I can still remember it was in June, and I didn't have, when I looked at my bank statement and I looked at my income coming in, I was going to hit the wall. In October, I didn't have October's mortgage payment covered. I couldn't pay my bills in October. I had enough money till October. But I had no speaking engagements on the horizon. There was always a big paying, gig on the horizon that kind of kept me going, right? There was nothing on the horizon. I didn't have any courses. I'd done the course, and nobody wanted the course. But in the meantime, I was delivering the course. I was delivering the content to the 18 people who I'd promised it to, and I was pretty depressed. But I thought I got to give it one more chance. And around that time, I think I'd read Marcus Sheridan's book. Maybe I read it afterwards. And kind of it all blends together, anyways. But the bottom line was, I started to listen. You're talking about Evernote. I started to listen and pay attention to what people were paying attention to that I created. And every time I posted a video on Evernote, people watched it, and they loved it, and they commented, and they asked for more. I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a course on Evernote. Now, I was a little bit afraid because Evernote could be had for free. So paying for a course for a product that you could get for free, I saw that there was going to be a bit of a challenge there. But I built this Evernote course, and I built it during the summer. I built it in late July, early August, when I was on my vacation at my family's cabin in the Caribou Lake region here in British Columbia. And over a couple of days, I wrote this course sitting in a notebook while being depressed because I wasn't going to be able to pay my bills in October. And my family's going, "Dad's not very happy today." So I wrote it, and in late August of that year, I had, now started to pay more attention to mail lists and that sort of stuff. I had my first real sales webinar. I think I had 150 people on the webinar, and I can still remember the numbers. I needed $3,000 or I wasn't going to be able to pay my bills. And I sold the course for $99, and we finished the webinar, and my phone started pinging, and there was it was PayPal notification, $99. PayPal notification, $99. And I still get a little shivers down my spine remembering the emotional kind of river that I crossed as I saw these PayPal notifications going in. And you can't, you keep a track in your mind. You don't really know. So I opened PayPal, and there by mid-afternoon, early evening, there was like $1,800 in PayPal. And I'm going, maybe this is going to work. Overnight, we came up to 35. So I had I had the money that I needed, and it was a pretty emotional time. Yeah. By the time that that closed over the next couple of days, we ended up with 70 or 80, just under $8,000 in revenue in PayPal, and so I had October and November's covered, and and I'd just done the initial launch, and so now because it was an early bird launch, I was going to adjust the price upwards, and I was I had a product that I knew I could sell. And we delivered it. And that was the product that ultimately you discovered. And then that gave me the confidence to start to do other things. So then we started to do a weekly webinar that we call Webinar Wednesday, which we've been doing now for nearly 4 years. We did that shortly thereafter, where we basically teach, and we use it as a list builder. Every time we do one on Evernote, still to this day, it's huge. Evernote has been kind of a big product for us, but it's just because I listened to what my marketplace was interested in.
And I was writing a book about that time called Listen First, Sell Later.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a great story. It's a great story. So from there, I mean, it was the light bulb moment for you. And I guess everything started changing at that point.
Yeah, I got a feeling the light bulb moment for me was the light was on a dimmer switch, and sometimes it turned up a little brighter, sometimes it turned down a little darker. Every time I thought I understood something, somebody would dim it down again.
So anyways, here we are, 5-6 years later. We have almost a year here now of COVID, and So what have you been doing this past year? I mean, I know the answer to that is something called the gray wave, which we'll talk about. But bring us up to date, up to the gray wave, and why.
Well, that once we kind of got through that, through the the crisis period, I started to build a traditional, or not a traditional. I started to build an online business of the type that I wanted, and each one of our. That's one thing about the online world is every one of us builds kind of our own model. And so I built mine on my platform of continuing to grow my YouTube channel as a discovery engine, getting people onto our mail list, getting them into Webinar Wednesday so they understood the value, and then purchasing one of our courses. And I built a small team. There's a team of 3 of us with April and Liz. Liz does all of our design and graphics and all of our production work. April does all of our system stuff. And I had a coffee with a friend of mine about 2.5 years ago. And he was a person who I had just tremendous respect for. And he was a person that you would know, this sort of person from the industry. He for the longest time, he ran Adobe in Canada. He was a terrific mentor. He just had this real leadership ability to nurture and to build a phenomenal sales team. And the reason I knew him well was because Adobe was one of my sponsors for the TV show for all those years. So I negotiated with him many a sponsorship deal on my television show. And he went on to, after Adobe kind of went away from the national model where they didn't have national managers anymore, he went on to other companies and had some great success with some other companies, always building teams. And he was in town, and we had coffee. And just I live in a little village here in southern British Columbia, and I can still remember we're sitting outside of a cafe. Actually, we're having sushi, sitting on the street. My dog was laying down at my feet, and Kevin was saying, he says he's really struggling. And I went, "Why are you struggling, Kev?" And he goes, "Well, I can't find a job. Nobody wants to hire me. I can do my own thing, but you know what? I like to build teams." And I said, "With all the startups going on, nobody's going to hire you?" And he goes, "No, they see me as too old." Yep. He's a couple of years younger than me. And I said, "BS. That's got to be crap, Kevin. Your resume, anybody sits down and talks to you, you're engaging, you're insightful. He just gets it." And he goes, "No, it's true." And so I started to look around, and I started to recognize that so many people our age were experiencing ageism. And it's something that I'd always ignored. I think it was, now we're talking about, we're kind of coming to awareness that we all have a certain privilege. The white privilege, the concept that's come out of Black Lives Matter has caused a lot of us to take a look at our lives and realize often, how easy it is for us, how blessed we are. And for me, that had always been the case. I'd always have been accepted. I'd never had any artificial roadblocks, and I'd never been rejected for who I was or how old I was. And so it was foreign to me. But as I looked, I realized the damage it was done, and I started to do some research. A couple of statistics just jumped out at me and hit me in the face. The first was that this one, Bob, every day in North America, 12,000 people reach the age of retirement.
Right.
12,000 reach the age of 65. And a tiny percentage of those want to retire. Because, when we were kids, when you're almost the exact same age I am, do you remember sitting around the kitchen? I can remember starkly sitting around the kitchen table with my family, with my mom and my dad talking about some person who we knew. My dad was an engineer who had retired 2 years ago, who died. Yeah. And because in North America, in 1965, The average person who retired at the age of 65 had 4 years of life left.
Wow.
That was it. If they retired in 1960, they were dead by 64 on average.
I remember that.
So when you retire, so you wanted to retire so you could get stuff done. Well, somebody who retires today at the age of 65, they still got a long road ahead of them. On average in North America, we're living for more than 19 years. And the way that this works, it means longer because that's what they know now. So we're living longer. So that age of retirement that's kind of stuck in our head of 60 or 65 is now, okay, that's fine. We're going to retire. Now what? What are we going to do next? And the financial pressures that we're under with the way that the world has gone and other things. Some people financially can't afford to retire, but most of us just don't want to. I don't want to be marginalized. I worked a long time to develop the skills, and I want to be relevant. I still want to participate. I still want to be a player. I don't want to just sit on the sidelines, but we're being forced to. So at the same time this is happening, we've got the growth of the online world where there's all of this opportunity if you just want to hang your own shingle and do your own thing. But it's a foreign world to our generation. We think that the online world belongs to baby boomers and to millennials, right? You know, baby boomers and Gen X think that that's their world and this is our world. And frankly, in a lot of cases, we don't even respect the power, the awesome nature of the online world because it's not the old way of doing things. I mean, you know, some of us don't even text still, or we're uncomfortable with social platforms, and we look down our nose at those things. Yet here we have the world shifting its emphasis and rejecting us. And as I sat down at that lunch with Kevin, and I said, buddy, you know, you got to do what I do. You got to just build a side hustle. You know, you should be writing a book. You should be sharing your knowledge. You can do for hundreds and thousands of people what you did for your team of 12. And that got me thinking, and he started to ask questions, and it's got me thinking, wow, I've learned so much in this last 6 years. I need to share it. And for the first time, I'd always, and this is going to sound a little bit maudlin, but I'd always done this for me and for my family. You know, looking for success for us. I hadn't really found my why. And it was almost like everything popped into focus. I know how to build a business online. I know how to take our experience and our knowledge. I'm a baby boomer who builds my business on YouTube. I'm a graybeard on YouTube. We're few and far between. But and most of us don't think we can because for no good reason. I've got to pull that veil away and give the rest of my my people that are my age demographic the same opportunities. And I can be an example. It's not just I can say, look, you know, you could do this. I can say, look, I've done this, and here's how we did it. And that's the beginning of us building our community, which I'm thrilled to have you as a member of. But it's to teach baby boomers and Gen X that you can build a side hustle. You can determine when your relevance ends. You don't have to let the world decide that.
Yeah, and, you know, and at the same time, I was going through sort of some of the same things because, you know, people had. I was in sales all my life and marketing, and I had my own company almost in my entire life, and the phone would ring off the hook. But about 65, right around that age, the phone stopped ringing. You know, I wasn't getting the calls anymore. I still had clients, but I wasn't getting as many. And I thought, you know, maybe it's time for me to just cut back a little bit here. I think there was an excuse on my part, to tell you the truth. But I thought I'll go fishing or something like that. That ended up being a mistake because I just got sicker and sicker from not working. I actually had to, have surgeries, and it just, my life kind of went to hell, to tell you the truth. So I decided, well, I'm going to go back and start doing this again. And I'm going to do some stuff online. I'm going to start doing some of the seminars and workshops that I did online. And so that's kind of how, again, we ended up meeting each other. And I was just kind of following along. And then all of a sudden I hear you start talking about something called the gray wave. And I was like, wait a minute, I got to get in on this. This sounds really good. And you opened it up for just a few founding members. And I jumped on. I mean, it is a great organization. It's not an organization. What is it? A community, a brotherhood, sisterhood kind of thing. There's so many side benefits to that community. I mean, I know I'm preaching to you, but I'm to the listeners here. Just having those people be a part of my life at this point is so reassuring and confirming of what we're doing.
And, you know, the thing about baby boomers and Gen X is we share life experience. We share values, and those values aren't necessarily shared across all generations. So finding a community, finding mentors who can help you along the way. When I built the community, I didn't want to be the only person that taught. I wanted it. The reason that I was successful, that I got to success, is people like Mari Smith who opened my eyes. And then as a result of that, I started, you know, I became a speaker at things like Social Media Marketing World and Vid Summit and, you know, VidCon and these sorts of places. And I would meet other speakers and other kind of other leaders in the space, and they became my friends. And they became the people who looked at what I was doing and gave me advice and a sounding board. And when I was being depressed or if I was, struggling, I could turn to them, and they would help me out in different ways as we went along. The average, most of us don't have the opportunity to find that community. I wanted the Gray Wave to represent that community. I felt all of our experience coming together. We could nurture each other. We could act as each other's support. And, and we will drive and we will teach the skills that are needed and make sure that people understand the basic principles, because business today is not what business was when you and I grew up. When you started your first business, or if you remember we used to go through a business plan.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There was even books, and you would write down, you would do all of this planning in advance, because the stakes were so high when you started a business, because it was business models when we were coming up was build and deploy. We would have to build the entire infrastructure before we ever let the public see thing one. And if we calculated wrong, we failed. And that's why the failure rate of startup businesses was so high historically. Well, businesses today aren't build and deploy. Businesses are seed and grow. You can have an idea as a seed, and you can grow that into a business. You post a tutorial on how to use Evernote, and people watch that tutorial, and you go, I'm going to grow that to the next level. And you give a free course. You do a little free course to get people to sign up for your mail list, and people sign up for that mail list. And you go, well, let's grow it to the next level. And you release a 10-part series on how to use Evernote that you charge $99 for. And people buy that. And you've grown a business from a seed. You didn't start out planning to build a 10-part online course and then reverse engineer how are you going to get people to find it.
Right.
And we need to understand that. And, I guarantee you, people are listening to this right now and going, for the first time, they're going to go, holy shit, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a year ago, a good friend of mine, he'd been at the same company, same job all his life, had worked his way up high C-level. And then one day, his boss and the head of HR walked into his office, shut the door, and said to him, "It's all over." They let him go. He was 60. He's been depressed for a year. He's struggled. He ended up having some health issues as a result of the whole thing. I could see it happening in him. And he's a good friend. I felt terrible for him. And he has been in marketing and sales kinds of, he comes up from that world. But trying to market and sell yourself when you're over 60, he's lost.
And here's the thing. We don't recognize always who we are is very, for baby boomers, especially for male baby boomers, but for baby boomers and Gen X, what we do is a big part of who we are. And when you surgically remove a piece of what we do, we lose a big part of ourselves. And the cascading series of the kind of the descent into darkness that starts is profound. You're your friend. First, you're going to experience depression and then anger. You're going to go through all the phases of grief and anger, and then that could lead to alcoholism or substance abuse or spousal abuse, and sadly, suicide. All of these cascade directly out of this loss of relevance, which means that you start I guarantee you, if you watched your friend walk into the office in the morning of the day that he was let go, and you watched him walk out at the end of the day, he would have an entirely different gait. He would have walked out as a defeated person, lost. and he has to find a way to claw himself back into relevance. And he's not, and because you'd always identified yourself as part of a larger organism, part of that large company, he sees his relevance as being part of that company. He has to recognize that he is what's relevant, and he has to determine that he's going to kind of build his own thing himself and find a way online. And you can. I mean, that's the hope that we give in the gray wave. Not everybody's going to be able to recover from those wounds. But as you can see by the community, a lot of us do.
Yeah. Those two things came together, my search for my own identity and changing things, because I felt, I thought, well, maybe, I just don't have it anymore. I mean, I did think that for a while, I was thinking it, and I thought, you know what? No, I still have it. I'm still the same person.
You get on a call with somebody and you start giving somebody advice, or you start problem solving, and all of a sudden some really intelligent crap comes out of your mouth. Yep. And you go, oh, I still got it. I mean, I'm always, that's one of the nice things about doing live streams and stuff, is every once in a while I say something and I go, oh, that was good. And I don't you don't want to say it out loud, but it's like affirmation. It's like when you're playing sports and you hit the 3-pointer again and you say, hey, I can still do this.
Yeah. So, I felt great. So the gray wave for me has been great. And it's led to a unique circumstance between you and I.
Yes, indeed.
So we're now collaborating. We can tell the world, I guess, on a book.
We're having a baby.
It'll be published probably early spring.
Mm-hmm.
Can we tell them the name, you think?
Sure, you do it. You've done the heavy lifting.
It's called No Limit Over 50. It's sort of what it sounds like. It's for someone who wants to, wants something different. Maybe they've lost their job. They just want something different. They want a new job. Maybe they're looking for a side hustle. They want to change careers. And this is kind of a how-to. You do it in the age of online, especially even with COVID involved here. So we're having fun putting this together.
Yeah, not everybody wants to build their own online business. A lot of people, when they come out of their work environment, they go, I'd really like to just find another job, but they don't necessarily want to become an Uber driver. But they want to do it. And so the book is really designed to bring them up to speed with with hiring in the social age, and what they have to do to how they prepare to be hired in the social age. Because for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but probably for the first time, they're going to be interviewing and they're going to be hired by somebody younger than them. And and things have changed. Things have changed, Bob.
Yep. No, I remember being recruited, and this is back, probably 10, 15 years ago, maybe. And I got recruited by a company, pretty big company. And I thought, I'll go see what it's about. I was doing my own thing, and I've done my own thing most of my life, but this was kind of a high paying job, sounded interesting. So I remember going in there, and there was this kid. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, how old are you? He was like 32, maybe, 30, 32. And at the time I'm like, 60 something. It was a shock. It was a shock.
Call your control not to call him Sonny. That's the reality. And you're not going to be faxing in a cover sheet with your resume anymore.
Going back to my friend, well, he's networking a lot. That's what he's trying to do. But I think, that only goes so far. So.
Well, and there'll be a diminishing pool that will work with, because that will continue to work with people who are of a similar vintage. And as long as they are gainfully employed, he might luck out. He might find something. But as a ongoing strategy, I think it's far better to, it still might work. You wouldn't stop doing that, but you have to recognize that things have changed, and give yourself the best bet. You've got to kind of dress for the part for the new role.
Where are we going with the gray wave? Where's it going to go next?
Oh, we're continuing to grow. We've as you mentioned, you were one of the founding members. So we built the membership with 50. We ended up with 70 actually founding members who because when you launch a community portal like this, it's got a whole bunch of supporting content. Kind of different basic introductory courses covering a lot of different aspects of online and content marketing, and we hadn't built any of that. we had the concept, we had the ability, we had the knowledge, but we hadn't built it. And so we offered a small group of people saying, if you believe in this project, we're going to invite you to join, but we're going to expect something in return. You're going to be testing out how we deliver this content, and we're going to find the best way for our community to serve this content. So that happened in June of 2020. So I guess we launched it right in the middle of COVID. I never even thought of that. Yeah, we launched it right in the middle of COVID. So June of 2020, we launched, and we brought people on board. And in August and September, we rolled out the first modules, and we got feedback from you folks on the volume of content that we were going to deliver, and the level, and the rhythm of how we do our live tutorials, and when we're accessible, and all of that sort of stuff. And so we launched it to the public in September, and we brought another 100 members or so on in the meantime. So it's still a very small community. It's about 170 people so far in the community. But now we're going into I'm in the marketing phase. So I'm wearing two hats. We constantly develop new content for the community. This month's module, we're teaching about copywriting, and which I'm a terrible copywriter. So one of my different people on the team take leadership in. So April is taking the leadership in the copywriting module. Next month, we're doing affiliate marketing. I'm the product lead on that one there. So I've been creating all of the content and all the tutorial materials for that. At the same time, we are preparing our evergreen funnel, a sales funnel. So that's quite sophisticated, and it'll be supported through YouTube ads and a podcast. I have a podcast as well called Gray Matters with Steve Dotto, which is kind of my main outreach to the gray community, to teach, to get people to as a discovery engine, so people start thinking about it, and preparing people, the right people to join the community. So I hope by the end of this year for us to be north of 400, maybe even 500 people by the end of 2021 in the community, and we'll probably cap it, not at that number, but probably somewhere under 1,000 as far as would be the ultimate number that I would love to see inside the community. I think at that point there's great energy, there's great income coming from it, so we can invest a lot more back in it, and I can add headcount. So that's the next thing, is we're going to be starting to add some additional kind of success champions to help our community members, because they come in so many levels. That's one thing about having baby boomers. Some of them are not quite up to speed on all of the tech, and other ones like you are very comfortable with all of the tech. So we teach you techniques, whereas we have to teach them processes. So we need to be able to cover off all of the different levels.
We should let the listeners know too that we have a private Facebook group for the group. So, and we talk on there all day long. Well, not all day, but every day. I think, there aren't too many days that I don't post something. And I get a lot of value out of what other people post. They post questions, or they might stumble onto something and say, listen, I stumbled onto this, and while we were working on branding or marketing, whatever, we were working on, I stumbled into something. And we learn as much from them as we do from you and April and Liz. I mean, it's going to just grow that way.
That's the only way a community like this can scale properly, is if everybody is contributing. And the beauty of a community like ours, which is full of baby boomers, is the depth of experience. People are jumping in there with years and years of tangential experience that is ever so valuable, and the advice coming in, and just the stories. I mean, you're making friendships as well. So I'm thrilled with how that part of it is turning out. I tend to try and not to be kind of a fly on the wall more than the driving force, because I'm the driving force as far as the main content, and I don't want my fingerprints over everything. I want the community to develop its own personality, and it's developing a great one.
Yep, that is how it's working. So one last thing here, I guess I'd like to ask you. So if someone's listening and they do want to make a change, what could you tell them? I mean, some people are just afraid. I know when we get to a certain age, it was one of the things I was afraid of. I was like, wait a minute, I'm here at 70 now. How much time do I have left here? I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to go off and do something that's just going to be a waste of my time. So I think, some people are afraid to make a mistake. They're afraid to jump in. And some people are wondering, what will I be able to learn this stuff? So what can we say?
And we're afraid to look stupid as well. I mean, there's a lot of that and whether or not, just have enough energy to go into it. I think the best thing that I can say is, I almost want to say what's the worst that could happen, but I don't think that's the right way of positioning it. I would say that if you look at the value you bring, are you ready for that to be dimmed? And if you're not ready for it to be dimmed, there's only one person who can keep you relevant and the gift that you can give to others. And that's you. I'll end this off with one story briefly. A big part of who I am comes obviously from our fathers. Our parents have a big influence. And my dad was the patriarch of our family. He wanted to be involved in every decision ever made. And he had a rapier-like wit. My dad he was sharp. I can still remember, Bob. My daughter ended up being an excellent student, and she won what's called the Governor General's Award, which is the highest academic acknowledgement you can get here in Canada. And she had a full scholarship to any university she wanted. But when she won the Governor General's Award for academics, she's now a PhD, by the way. But when she won the Governor General's Award for academics, I told my dad, and I said, "Dad, Steph won the Governor General's Award for academics." And he looked at me, and without missing a beat, he goes, "No surprise there. Intelligence is like the twin gene. It skips generations." So this was my dad, and he was a force of nature. I can still remember at one point having a family dinner and talking to my brother about a mortgage. And there was this new financial mechanism, or one of our banks was offering a line of credit mortgage where you pay into your mortgage and it reduces the amount of interest you pay because you actually put all of your money into the mortgage and then you draw down on the mortgage through the month. But it ends up reducing the amount of interest. It's not terribly complex, but it's a unique financial mechanism. And we were talking about it, and I looked down at the end of the table, and how every once in a while you kind of just, with a loved one, you just have insight that words can't describe, but how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And what turmoil.
Sure.
And I saw real pain in my dad's eyes. And the issue was that we were making an important life, we're talking about something important, and he didn't have an opinion. He didn't have value to add. He was irrelevant in our conversation. And I recognized this tremendous fear in his eyes of not being relevant to his family, to the community that's most important to him. And in fact, I think that pain was when he finally passed away. He passed away a few years back, but and it happened very quickly over a weekend. He was elderly already, and they discovered a cancer that they couldn't do anything about, and it all happened very quickly. And when the doctor was given the prognosis, he was more accepting of that than he was of this being irrelevant. I recognize that Dad was more afraid of not being a player, of not being relevant in our lives than he was of dying. And I recognize that same thing in myself. I want to be a player to my last breath. That's why I struggle so hard. That's why I stay on top of this technology. That's why I do what I do, is I want to be relevant. I don't want to be just grandpa sitting in the corner and, here, look at the picture, grandpa. This is an iPad. Isn't it cool? Just no. If that's you, and I think it's not everybody, but if that's you, then you have to do this. You owe it to yourself because you still have something to give. And that's where purpose in life comes from, is being relevant. And so regardless of if you find it difficult, if you're afraid that you don't have enough cycles to make it happen before the mortal coil is shuffled, it doesn't matter, because if you want to be relevant, it's part of the struggle. That's what we do. So that's what I would say to those people. That's a long answer, but that's what I would say.
It's a great answer. And thank you very much.